Hey guys, I wanted to talk, and ordinarily I go for a walk in the woods or maybe down by the beach, but it's a cold, rainy winter day here in New York, so I figured we'll go in the car instead. And I happen to have a nice new car, just got it last week. Look at the color. Very nice blue color. It's a little wet though, but we'll go for a ride in the car. It smells good. I know you can't smell it from here, but I'm telling you, it smells really good. So we'll go in here, we'll go for a drive, and we'll talk. How's the lighting in here? Oh, you know what? Hold on. Open up the roof. Now you can see. I probably need a haircut, but yeah, that's decent lighting. You should probably turn off the radio. Don't want to get copyrighted. So anyway, what Bill and I do here on the channel, we like to kind of have a nice balance in our videos between, gear reviews, camera reviews, general, photography talk, composition, technique, editing things in Lightroom, tutorials, things like that. So, a nice overall balance from photography, photography lifestyle and things like that. But by far, our most widely viewed videos have to do with gear. Gear reviews, gear talk, comparisons between different lenses, between different cameras. And, I was kind of wondering, why exactly is that? It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And we try to produce videos and content that people want to watch. So that's more of our videos are more often about those kinds of things because we know that's what people are interested in. But the question really is why? Like, why are photographers so interested in the gear, the machinery, and the technical aspects of creating art? And I don't really know the answer to the question, so I figured, throw out some ideas, maybe get some feedback from you guys, see what you guys think. But, photography is a different kind of art, really, than anything else, in that, to practice it and to get really good at it, you really have to have a mastery of a very technical piece of equipment, a piece of machinery. These cameras these days, especially nowadays, they're like computers. You really need to know how that machinery works. And I guess it was the same back in the old days, when everything was manual and film, you had to know how it works. But understanding the technical aspects of how cameras work and how lenses work and all the physics involved and what goes into all of that stuff is really, in a lot of cases, can be the difference between, just casual snapshots and actually being able to create, the kind of photographs that you want to create. Because as photographers, we have, you have a vision in your head before you even take the shot. A lot of my images that I create, I've thought about beforehand. Like, something will come to mind, a certain, the way things relate to each other in a scene, and I'll see other things, I'll see other pieces of art, and I'll say, kind of have it always in the back of my mind to be able to create something like that. And then you really need this piece of equipment, this big, heavy, sometimes piece of equipment to actually make that image real. You can't just look at it or think of it and it becomes an actual image. You need a tool to do that. So I think really part of the photographer's fascination with gear has to do with that technical part of it. That know-how that you have to have to create these images. And sometimes it's also about, I think, and I'm guilty of, these things as well, and it's not a bad thing, like I said. A lot of it maybe sometimes is thinking that, the gear maybe plays more of a role than the photographer itself. So, you'll look at, and I do it too, you'll look at some images and you'll see something really great and you'll wonder what camera was used there. And we'll see that question all the time. What camera did you use? What lens did you use? And as often as we see a question like that, the answers are as varied as there are cameras. We'll see people ask, you'll see a great question on a great image on Instagram. Someone will say, what did you use for that? And it's, I used the Canon 1DX. And you'll see another image the next day of an equally great image, and the answer will be, I used the Canon T1i that I've had for 25 years. And so the actual gear itself, it matters in the features and things like that, but I don't know that it matters as much as we think that it does. So I think that to a certain degree, photographers kind of rely on that technical part of it, because it's a language that we can relate to each other with and that we can all understand. It's easier to understand shutter speed and aperture and focal length than it is to understand sometimes composition and certain technical aspects of creating an image. Rule of thirds, leading lines, complementary colors, things like that. All kinds of things that go into it that aren't necessarily set in stone rules, but that go into creating photographs. Sometimes the tangible thing, the actual piece of equipment, is actually easier to comprehend than the intangible, than the art that goes behind it. So I think sometimes as photographers we fall back on that. We rely on, well, if I understand the equipment and I understand and I have the good equipment and I'm using the same equipment that other people are using, then that's a big step in the right direction to creating the kind of art that I want to create. And that's not necessarily incorrect, but I think that's something else that goes into it. And I don't know if you necessarily get that with other art forms. Do painters see other paintings and say, like, wow, what kind of brush did you use, or what kind of paint is that, or how did you mix those colors? Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they do, but it doesn't seem like that's as big an important part of it in other forms of art. If you're sculpting, what kind of chisel did you use? Or if you're a chef, what kind of oven do you use? What kind of oven mitts do you use to get your stuff out of the oven? I don't know. Maybe I'm sure there is a certain degree of that in other forms of art. But just in photography, it seems like it's a lot more of gear related and things like that. And it's a common language for photographers. It's a common language that we all understand. It's very easy to get together with other photographers and talk about your camera, talk about what lenses you have, your lens straps, what kind of tripod head you have, things like that, because it's a common language that we all understand. And there's definitely, like I said, nothing wrong with being interested in gear. I do it all the time. I have a ton of great gear. I love thinking about it and figuring out different things, and I do the same thing. I go on YouTube and I go onto websites and I look up reviews and I look up different comparisons of things. I'm doing it all the time because it's fun. More than anything else, it's a fun part of being a photographer, is being able to put together the gear that's going to match the kind of things that you're trying to achieve. But what I definitely would recommend, which I try to do as often as I can, is for every video that you watch about a lens review or comparing one camera to another, find a video that's also about technique and composition and art and things like that. Add that into the mix also, because that's equally as important as the gear that you use. The gear is important. I'm not gonna deny that. I use really good gear. If you want to be able to create the kind of images that you're trying to create, that you have in your head, that you started out with, the gear can't get in the way of that. You need to be able to create without having to work around the gear, and that's really the biggest obstacle for us. So that definitely is a very important part. But then mix in there also, when you go on you go down a rabbit hole of YouTube videos one day looking for different, pieces of equipment that are going to help you out, spend some time looking at other things, other aspects, photography, lifestyle, framing, composition, techniques, things like that. What some people do, find images and find out how people created those images and what goes into making a great image. Look at other forms of art, not just photography also. Look at paintings. Go to a museum and look at paintings that you see, and those things are there for a reason. People love certain types of art for a reason. It's been throughout human history. Humans are inclined to view certain pieces of art with more beauty than others, and there's more meaning behind it, and there is almost a formula to it. There really is, and it's learning that stuff and understanding composition and understanding the interacting of the different elements in your photo is just as important as gear. Gear is important, but that stuff is just as important also. I hope that makes sense. I think that makes sense. I don't know if I really answered the question I started out with, but I think it's probably, maybe vaguely in the ballpark of the reason why, photographers are so obsessed with gear in a good way, in a good, fun way. We're obsessed with the technical aspects and the equipment and all those little details that go into making an image, because it's fun. So if you want to add to the conversation, you have any insights, you have any thoughts about this topic, and why photographers are as interested in this as we are, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Any questions or anything, put them in the comments below. We're going to put up a couple of videos here. One is gear related and one is not gear related, so choose which rabbit hole you want to go down and just have fun with it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.